Pacers go to New Orleans and don't play defense and don't make any threes and get punked by the kind of red-hot Pelicans and fall to the second worst record in the NBA. Yikes, what happened? We'll break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday/weekend, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the Pacers for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today, oh boy, the Pacers go to New Orleans, playing much better, but not that great Pelicans team, and get completely punked starting in the first quarter. Not long after Rick Carlisle calls it a first quarter league, the Pacers go down by 17 in the first quarter and lose by 19. You can do math. They were much better. The rest of the game didn't matter. They were that bad to start the game. Their defense was not good for much of this night. Their three-point shooting was atrocious. Their best moments came without their starters on the floor. And then a very cryptic comment from Rick Carlisle post-game about that. Very, very interesting stuff from the now 6-22 Pacers, meaning the only team with an outright worse record than the Pacers right now is the Wizards, and they're the same number of games back. They just have a worse win percentage. Pacers falling, as some fans hoped they would. On a crappy day of sports, every college football game was terrible. The Pacers were not much better, and I think you just start with the big things. How often do you hear about 3-and-D players? In this game, I would call the Pacers a very pathetic for a night 3-and-D team. This first quarter was just ridiculous. 44 points for the New Orleans Pelicans. That matches the highest the Pacers have allowed in any quarter the entire season. The Jazz third quarter, in that game they gave up 152, was the only other 44-point quarter they've allowed. It was their highest points allowed first quarter by a mile. The Pelicans just were destroying them. They were getting to the rim very easily. Zion Williamson all night, although he wasn't even that awesome in the first quarter. He had 8 points. It's very good. Trey Murphy got to the cup a bunch. He had 10 points. Basically, everybody on the Pelicans was feeling it. They made 17 shots, including 4 threes, 6 free throws, and only turned it over one time. There just was no resistance in any form or fashion in the first quarter. And some of this was the Pacers doing it to themselves. They shot horribly, 37% in that quarter, and had 3 turnovers. So the Pelicans had easier up-tempo chances. In fact, the tempo of the game early was crazy fast. There were no foul calls. I got a kick out of Kristen Aries' early foul call saying, we haven't come close to needing a shot clock tonight. That was a great call. And it was true. It was really, really up-tempo. And the Pacers had rim pressure and kept that tempo for the game when they cut it to 9. But early in the game, that absolutely did not favor them at all. That favored New Orleans massively, who had 44 first quarter points and scored 70 points in the paint in this game. Just terrible numbers, right? You give up that many points in the paint, you're going to lose a lot. And all that started in the first quarter with 13 made twos for the Pelicans. That's more than the Pacers had total made shots in the game. And they stopped nobody. I mean, I ran through some of the guys, but Saddiq Bey hit a 3, Herb Jones hit a 3, and then left the game for the rest of the night. Trey Murphy hit a 3, Jordan Poole hit a 3, but every other make was a 2. 2 for Trey Murphy, 2 for Derek Queen, 1 for Herb Jones, 3 for Zion, 1 for Jordan Poole, 3 for Karla Makovic. It was just easy stuff for New Orleans. And I don't really know if I could say any Pacer defended particularly well in the first quarter. And the first quarter, this is different than the rest of the game. And what kind of was the difference? The bench for the Pacers in this game was on balance, actually kind of solid. Some poor shooting games from a few guys, certainly, but their best minutes came with some combination of McConnell, Furphy, Thompson, Wiseman on the floor, mixed in with some starters, Siakam usually among them, right? But that group's only poor stretch, and I don't think Wiseman or Furphy touched the floor in the first quarter. In fact, I can just tell you that because I'm looking at the box score that they did not. That group, the bench's only poor stretch was the first quarter. The rest of the game, they were okay to acceptable. And so in tandem with the bad defense and the starters struggling, the Pacers just had no chance. I mean, so many of my early notes, the Pacers were 4 for 13, gave up a 10-0 run. They're already behind double digits, right? Just an awful defensive start. The Pelicans were just sticking everything. It was 29 points for the Pels when the Pacers had already called a second timeout. There were so many moments in this game where I thought, what's going on for the Pacers on defense where, well, at one point, I think it was that stretch earlier where they got it to 9 that I mentioned, and then they just kind of were flimsy and lazy on the glass. Derek Queen, very easy offensive rebound. He got the ball after an offensive rebound and had an easy putback. I don't actually think I'm in the first quarter box score. That's why. He had an easy putback to score. Zion had a very easy offensive rebound. and put back to score, and you just go, okay, like what was that? They had no answer for Zion all night, and he's just a powerful player who was working harder than them, and they couldn't keep him away from the basket. Some guys had decent reps defending him in the game. We'll talk about them later when we run through the notebook, but I just thought the Pacers defense offered little resistance to drives. They gave up open threes as a result. They never got into rhythm on offense that allowed them to keep the Pelicans out of transition. And then like the other stretch where the Pacers get close, Micah Peavy, a second-round pick from the most recent draft, gets going with 5 straight points. Like their defense just really came and went all night, and you're not going to win when that happens. You're just not, right? So really, really poor night for the Pacers defensively. And, you know, going into this break of the NBA Cup, the narrative correctly, I thought, was like, okay, they maybe are turning a corner on defense. Who knows if they're actually playing better? We'll see when their schedule changes. Like maybe this is something for them to hang their hat on. And then really, really poor defense against New Orleans. Bad stretches against all 3 of the games before that, Philly, New York, and Washington. And now their defense is back inside, I believe, the bottom 10. I'll double check this because there were games played after I checked the stats tonight. But I believe they are back now in the bottom 10 for the season on defense. Oh, they're not. All right, they've held on to their 19th rated spot. So they're just outside the bottom 10. This was among their worst defensive games in a while, all guided by the first quarter. They did improve throughout the game, but like Rick Carlisle said, it can be a first quarter league. It wasn't quite for them when they played New York, but the Pelicans' second quarter was poor. Every other quarter, they scored 30+, including a 44.1. It never really clicked for the Pacers on the defensive end, pretty much regardless of who was on the floor. So that was tough for them. But you can make up for poor defense if you score pretty well. And the Pacers shot well on twos, 32 for 54. That's pretty good, about 60% on their 2-point shots. They were horrible from deep, absolutely horrible from long range. 8 for 42. I don't have there's not a lot to say analysis-wise about being a bad 3-point shooting team in a game. That just means you missed some threes. That happens, right? People call it shooting variance for a reason. There are bad shooting games. Go check the box score of Lakers-Clippers tonight if you want to see a bad shooting game. The Lakers' 3-point shooting was even worse than the Pacers. That's not to say the Pacers wasn't bad themselves. The Pacers, 8 for 42 tonight, 19% from 3 in this game. Some guys that can and have made threes this season, including Ben Mathurin going 0 for 5, Jay Huff going 0 for 4, Pascal Siakam goes 2 for 7, Quentin Jackson goes 0 for 2. That's 4 starters going combined 2 for 18 from 3, and Nembhard's 1 for 4 was not much better. So the starters were 3 for 22 from deep. Jarris was 1 for 8. Ethan Thompson was 1 for 5. Ethan Thompson, he did some good stuff in this game. We'll talk about him. 5 3-point attempts, 7 shots. Like, is that really the right thing? He deserved his minutes. He actually defended well, but no, it's just very confusing. The only player on the Pacers who took a 3 and made more than 1/3 of their threes was Garrison Matthews, who was 2 for 2 from deep. I know Kyle Taylor and I did a debate about who should be playing on the wings. There's a very easy argument to make that among their young guy off-ball guard / wing group, Garrison Matthews is maybe the best of them right this second. Who knows what that would mean for next season, but he made threes. Nobody else really did. So that was brutal. And like, there's not a lot to say about making and missing jumpers. That happens. But there is something to say when it's this level of bad about the context of how bad it is. 8 for 42 for the Pacers. That is the worst percentage by any team this season in the NBA who took at least 43s in the game. I believe the Lakers tonight, who had a worse percentage period, I'll pull up their box score while I'm talking. They did not take 43s, so they do not qualify for the volume part. The Lakers losing to the Clippers, by the way, is what pushed the Pacers into a tie for the second worst record. Yes, the Lakers, that's the Clippers. The Lakers were 6 for 38, so that's a worse percentage, but only 38 attempts. So that does qualify the Pacers still on their volume of 40-plus attempts. They took 42, the worst 3-point shooting game by any team in the NBA this year. In Pacers franchise history, when they've taken 40 or more attempts in a game, only 8 times they've made 10 or fewer, tonight being the 8th one. And this tied their worst 3-point percentage ever in a game with 40-plus attempts. They also went 8 for 42 against the Boston Celtics in January of 2024. So that's bad. Like, you just kind of lose, right? Like, with absolutely no offense to any other parts of the game. Their defense is what lost them the game, but their shooting was also really bad because, again, they finished well in the paint. Their 2-point percentage was good. They scored 60 points in the paint themselves. Like, that would have been something that, had they done okay in this game, would have been like, yeah, look at that. They got to the basket. That was really good. And they got 20 fast break points. Like, okay, that was good. And we'll get to Johnny Furphy. He was great. And James Wiseman's back, and he was doing stuff. And Garrison Matthews hits a 3. Like, some stuff went okay in this game. Siakam did his usual thing. He had 11 free throw attempts. He was getting pressure on the basket. Like all this stuff could have amounted to a win, and it didn't because they were so bad on defense and couldn't make a single three to put a dent in any runs caused by that bad defense. Like I had a note at one point in the third quarter. I think at this point in the game, the Pacers were down 11 or 9 or something like that, their biggest deficit. And then I ended up being 23 in the fourth, where I said, like, it felt like they had enough to win tonight generally, but they just defended so bad for the first 12 minutes. And then the rest of their game, their defense was a seesaw where, at some points, late third quarter, early fourth, and for much of the second quarter, their defense was really good. And the rest of the pockets of the game outside of those, it was quite poor like it was in the first quarter. That's just not going to work. And the starters' defense in particular was just terrible. I mean, the starting five was really poor in this game. And this is right after, by the way, hand up. Like I thought the Quentin Jackson group looked good against the Knicks, and I thought that that's probably the group they should stick with. I mean, I don't want to be too reactionary to one game, but this game was really bad. And Rick Carlisle, post-game, takes the mic, fielding questions. Shout out to Dustin Opirak for going to cover this game. The Indy Star sent him down. And he said, a lot of times in this world, small adjustments can make a significant difference. And that was right after he said, I've got to look at what's happening with the starters. We can do better there. That's generally not a good thing. The Siakam, Nembhard, Huff, Mathurin, Q Jackson lineup, 51 total possessions in 11 and a half minutes, minus 10 in a 19-point loss. Yikes. Plus 13 was that group I mentioned earlier. McConnell, Furphy, Thompson, Siakam, and Wiseman. They were quite good. But the starters being poor, the shooting being poor, the defense being poor, I mean, you can't overcome all that. You just cannot possibly overcome that, even with some stuff going well. I'm going to talk a lot about the notebook. I'm going to talk a lot about something that people keep saying that's bothering me. Johnny Furphy, very good. James Wiseman, back and playing better. Lots to get to still from Pacers Pelicans on today's Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, I need to tell you about Robinhood. Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs and options and futures and crypto, all right on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends Advanced Tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood Strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day or second listen. Locked On Pelicans. Jake Madison will cover this one. On the Pelican side, Zion Ballin. Good news for the Pels. Derek Queen continues to be awesome. I think he missed no shots, unless he missed one after I recorded that he missed no shots. Yeah, he went 8 for 8. He was great. I mean, they have something going there. I don't know how good it's going to be. They're finally turning a corner, though. Good for the Pels. Jake Madison born. Thank you for being an everydayer here on Locked On Pacers and listening every day. We have an everydayer club now. You can get ad-free episodes of this podcast and be a part of an exclusive Discord. You can find more about that in the description. Okay, the story of this game on the positive sign, whatever, I said the wrong word, was Johnny Furphy balling in this game. Spectacular game for Johnny Furphy. Finally, I would say, I don't even mean that finally to be necessarily critical, but I mean, I kept saying with guests and by myself that I keep waiting for him to do a thing. And I know he's defended pretty well. He's had his normal disruptive moments in every game, some against Zach LaVine, some against Kobe White, whatever, where it's like, okay, that maybe it's his thing, but his offense was not really there. And there were certain games where you're just like, he was just kind of out there, right? Tonight, he was awesome. He had, in his career, 3 games ever before this where he had more than 7 points. He had 12 points in that game against Brooklyn where he started the second half last year. He had 15 points in the double overtime game in Cleveland last year. He played over 40 minutes. He had 17 points in 32 minutes in that awesome game against the Magic he had last year where he absolutely threw down that dunk against Goga. And now this game, his career high, 18 points for Johnny Furphy in this game in only 23 minutes. He was really good poking into making shots, and he went 6 for 7 on twos, which was impressive. He was actually having burst towards the basket. He stuck his first 3, and that was nice. I think that was like a play that he needed to get his confidence going, because his next touch was a nice drive, and then he flew in for a near rebound that he didn't quite get. It was like a tip round that the Pelicans ended up with. And remember, last year his rebounding was his thing, and he ended up with 2 offensive rebounds in this game. You know, the nose for the ball was there. He played almost half the game. The Pacers won his minutes by 12 in a 19-point loss. So they were minus 31 in the half the game. He wasn't on the floor. He actually had impact as a scorer and a rebounder and with his normal pesky enough defense, where that stretch where the bench was out there, him and Wiseman were both playing well. That was the best game he's probably ever played. He put together good work on both ends of the floor. Shots were falling. Rim pressure was happening from him. He leveraged his shot to getting where he wanted to be on the court. We'll see if any of this sticks. His three-point percentage is actually okay this season, despite it feeling like he never makes them. His actual field goal percentage, I'm sure, is actually pretty acceptable once the stats update tomorrow morning. But he was really, really good in this game. I thought that was extremely noteworthy. Speaking of good, James Wiseman, welcome back to the Pacers. Rick Carlisle singling him out as well post-game. Wiseman did some good stuff in this game. He had a steal in transition to get a dunk off. He was been on the team for all of a couple hours after a morning little workout. Goes 3 for 5 with 3 boards and 6 points. The fouls were a little much, although one of them assigned to him I thought was on Siakam. But like he did some stuff in this game, playing with Furphy, who he's never played with before. Ethan Thompson, he's never played with before. Found ways to fit in and better post defense, specifically defending the post. Again, when he has to move, same problem Huff has. That's where he struggles on the defensive end. But I thought this was maybe his best game as a Pacer, which I chuckled because he's only played 3, but he played pretty well. He deserved the minutes he got. I'll talk more about that actual signing tomorrow. It came out a little bit out of nowhere. I didn't have a ton of time to prep for a segment on it because I was doing Christmas stuff all day. But Tony Bradley's banged up. Tony Bradley did not play. He has a thumb fracture. So Wiseman will be on the team for the rest of the hefty part of the next week. He should be active for their next 2 games as well. But he also showed some intrigue today, so that was good. So many other notes that I want to get to from this game. But those 2 guys I thought provided me the most personal intrigue, and those are the first 2 guys that Rick Carlisle singled out postgame. The other one being TJ McConnell, who it felt like at first his stats were really spread out, but it ended up being just a massive fourth quarter surge. I believe he had 12 points in just the fourth quarter. It might have been 10, regardless, double figures there. He goes 8 for 10 for 16 points and 8 assists, 2 steals, 4 rebounds. He was giving it his all in his 17 and a half minutes. Unfortunately, the rest of the Pacers were not necessarily on that same wavelength with him, but he had one of those games where he could just make that mid-range shot over and over and got wherever he wanted over and over. And the Pelicans guards are small, to their point guards. Jeremiah Fears hasn't dealt with a lot of crafty vets yet, and Jose Alvarado is a good player, but is small like that. They just couldn't stop McConnell. That was one of the few things really rolling for the Pacers. Speaking of Jose Alvarado, his random scuffle with Quentin Jackson was not like funny, but it just came out of nowhere, and they, there's a tackling and a flagrant. And then shout out to the Pacers and Pelicans because those 2 guys guarded each other for the next couple plays. Let that happen more often. Stop separating guys after that. Okay, some not as fun notes. Also, a very funny one. My first note about the bench bad again as soon as subs happen, which is hilarious to note in hindsight because the bench was good the rest of the game, right? They had a stretch with McConnell, Thompson, Furphy, Siakam, Wiseman out there, which is like wild that that's even possible. And that lineup was impossible. And it was good. That group was good. But basically every other note I'm going to read today before a little bit of soapboxing for me at the end is not as good. Jarris Walker had some nice moments battling with Zion Williamson down low. I thought that was nice. He was powerful over a small guard for, I believe, his only made shot of the game. He went 2 for 11. Excuse me. That was nice, but he went 2 for 11. 2 for 11. Like, you can't have that. Even though he only had 1 foul, he had no turnovers. That's good progress in that area, but the play finishing wasn't really there. He can only drive one direction right now, 1 for 8 from deep. I mean, we've seen that he can make shots, but overall, not the greatest game from him in his 20 minutes. It just continues to not quite put together complete games after a decent stretch about 3 weeks ago now. This felt like early to me a nobody to guard Siakam game. There's been a couple of these this season. Trey Murphy maybe kind of can. He's a little on the thinner side. Sadiq Bey is probably a little too slow. Derek Queen maybe not quite ready for the craft. And in the first quarter, Siakam was hooping. He was great. He was the only Pacer in double figures for forever. He had 10 points in just the first quarter. I believe through 3 quarters, he was the only guy in double figures until, a couple of guys got warm in the fourth. I mean, the game only finished with him, Furphy, and McConnell in double figures for the Pacers. So it felt like a game where nobody could guard him. Bey could try, Queen could try, Trey Murphy could try. Not that they can't at all, but they had nothing. And so that's fine. He finished with 22 points. I'm not saying Siakam had a bad game by any means. But something, if you listen to my postgame show after the Knicks game that I mentioned, was it felt like to me one aspect of the Pacers offense that was really crisp in that Knicks game was when somebody would drive, somebody would cut at the right time to occupy help defenders or to occupy space to be open for a pass. And the Pacers hit that pass often or had good ball movement. When Siakam got doubled or swarmed in this game by a Pelicans player, there was no avenues for that. The cuts were off time. The cuts were not into the right space. So the spacing that's basically spacing, right? That's not exactly the same as what you think of when you hear the word spacing. You think of like 3-point shooters, but that is spacing. And there was none of it, right? It was so clogged in the lane. He only had 3 assists. Now the Pacers did get to 28. They got 8 from McConnell. They got 5 from Nembhard. Like their point guards did enough to kind of get the ball moving, but they needed a little more, I think, from the cutting and help of Siakam because the Pels had no answer. They had to send 2 to him quite a bit, but the cutting that looked so good a couple days ago is not there. Also, really crazy that Zion, again, this is a wild week for me. I am not a ref guy. I very rarely talk about officiating. I'm not a ref truther by any means at all. It actually drives me crazy how often that becomes a talking point, But after I did a ref truthing thing in the Knicks game with the chair pull from Nembhard, Siakam gets completely elbowed in the face by Zion. He's bleeding from the face. And him and Rick Carlisle are figuring out like, hey, are you going to review that? And they don't. And then the Pacers get a delay of game and they got a tech free throw for the Pelicans. That was super weird. Like he's bleeding. It could not be more obvious. He got hit in the face. His mouth is bleeding. Some of the guys, I got a post in this game that said from someone else that like guys fighting for contracts or rotation spots, just not playing well is concerning. Like, yes, that will bleed into my point later on. But that's a note that I just read just now that I wanted to read. That's like very true. A lot of guys have been very up and down this season who are in that position. And that's been part of the general frustration and learnings for the Pacers in this game. 2 more slight positive notes before I just kind of eulogize. I don't even know what the right word is at the end here. 1, Isaiah Jackson in this game. You'll look at his stats and go see he went 1 for 4 with 4 points and go, whatever, minus 14. But he had 5 rebounds, 3 of them on the offensive end. I just feel like of late, against New York, he was fine. Against the Wizards, he was the only guy who tried. He's just played with more like oomph and power of late in a little bit of a way that I think has made him feel effective to me. And I think that's a positive. We'll see if that can continue. But Huff was off again in this game and Wiseman got real minutes. So I just want to give Isaiah Jackson some keep going, kid. Oomph power. He was doing good. Ethan Thompson. I talked about him already because he took 5 threes and only made 1 of them. He had 1 play where he caught it behind the line and Jose Alvarado, maybe it's because he's taking 5 threes, kind of ran out to stop the shot. And so Ethan Thompson shot fakes and he took the space in front of him and he got into the paint and he laid it up and scored. And something I talked about when I said, oh yeah, Quentin Jackson should probably keep starting after the Knicks game was that's something Quentin Jackson's very good at. He will take space in front of him and make a defense react. I just thought that was noteworthy that Thompson did that, right? He had the wherewithal to stop, figure out what's happening, drive and score. He's obviously more of a veteran than his rookie status suggests. He's been on a 2A before, but didn't play. He's been in the G League for a long time, but I don't think he should start. I think the Pacers probably have the right thing going right now, but that was good. That was good stuff from him. And I think more of that would go a long way for him, given his struggles to score a little bit recently. Okay. Last thing I want to say here. This is kind of a bunch of things in one. And some of you are just going to say, dude, shut up to this. I keep getting posts during games. They should tank. Just tank. They have the second worst record. They have the second worst record in the NBA. What do you want them to do? What are they doing now that's not working for you in that way? Is the second worst record not enough for the tank? If anything, this should be ideal to you, person who would say that, because they're still playing all the guys that they would like to learn more about in a different setting, and they're losing a lot of games. In theory, I would think if you're a tank fan, that would be perfect. So it's very confusing when I hear that. And then I hear other people who are like, I think they are tanking when they like see the result or they see certain things happen in a game, and it's just stuff that is not really tanky. So my other thing to say would be when a team is tanking, it's so obvious like when it's happening, especially if you think back to like the Jazz and Raptors last year. But I mean, you just know the Pacers are just bad right now. They're just bad, and that's fine. And I know those two things I said sound incongruent, but they have the second worst record, and they've been doing this. They're just a bad team this year who's really hurt and is missing most of their top guys from last year for various reasons. And they were very bad in this game, and they're 6-22, and they will try to get off the mat in Boston on Monday. We'll do a podcast after that. I'll do one tomorrow morning. I'm going to be hosting family for quite a while after this episode, so actually after tomorrow's episode, maybe. So get used to different weird backgrounds and different recording schedules. And I probably won't do any guests this week, unfortunately, because I mean, I don't want to drag people away from their families during Christmas. So a lot of me this week. Tomorrow, we will talk about James Wiseman being back with the Pacers. Very unique machinations to that signing. And then he played immediately and played pretty well. And then I want to talk about something somebody asked me about. Andrew Nemhardt's plus-minus numbers every game are just like so weird and not in a good way. Is there more to this? Why is that actually a thing? And then I have even more trade notes I would like to share with you, stuff that you need to know heading into trade season. Thank you guys so much for listening today. Hope you're having a great weekend and surviving the terrible first round of the college football playoff. You can find me on Twitter or on social media at Tony R. East, and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend. Talk to you on Monday.